The turnstiles at Circus World never turned as much as the owners hoped they would. Even though the park had a good location near the intersection of Interstate 4 and Highway 27 in Polk County, attendance was never up to par.
This is a story of not just one beginning and an end of a theme park, but two. The Ringling Brothers were American siblings who transformed their small touring company of performers into one of America's largest circuses. Beginning in 1882, a group of siblings performed skits and juggling routines around the state of Wisconsin. Their first circus was called the Ringling Brothers Variety Performance. The circus continued to grow and expand in scope, acts and locations visiting over the years. In 1919, the Ringling Brothers merged with Barnum and Bailey after previously owning them but operating separately. They created the American traveling circus known as the Greatest Show on Earth. After World War II, the popularity of circuses began to decline, while other forms of entertainment began to prosper. The circus moved from a traveling big top to indoor venues throughout the country. One of the promoters for said venues was Irvin Fowd. Irvin Fowd and his brother Israel Fowd had already made a name for themselves promoting rock and roll shows.
In Manhattan, this lady is a clown. In fact, she's never at a hen party because she produces them.
1967 saw Irvin Fowd, Israel Fowd, and Judge Roy Mark Hofheinz of Texas, and with the backing by the founder of Blum Capital, buy the Ringling Brothers Company outright for $8 million. Fowd began to make immediate changes to improve the quality and profitability of the show. Changes included removing the freak show aspect and an aim to become more family orientated. The following year, he created the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College.
This institution of higher hilarity has been in existence since 1968. We audition for clowns in every city we visit. Alumni call the 8-week intensive course the Boot Camp for Clowns.
Clown College is the most fantastic place in the world.
A few years later, in 1971, the circus was sold to toy maker Mattell for $40 million, and the Fowd family remained as management for the show. After seeing the success of the tourism industry down in Florida and with the opening of Walt Disney World, Fowd wanted to cash in on this booming industry. They created the Circus World Showcase on US Highway 27 just east of I-4 in Haines City, a preview center for the new upcoming Circus World. The showcase would have a dual purpose: a theme park with circus-themed rides and shows, a location for the Clown College, and a winter location for the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. The large 27,000 square feet open circus-looking preview center would house an IMAX theater, circus memorabilia displays, and a model of the proposed park. The lavish plans for the park were expensive, and were a way to try and attract investors to the theme park. The original proposal for the park on display was to be an immersive, fully fledged theme park that even had Walt Disney World scared of the competition. The planned $60 million park was seen as being backed by the deep pockets of Mattell and just 12 miles down the road from the Magic Kingdom. Following the September 1972 announcement of the project, Disney made their own announcements to try and counter the upcoming projects in the area, including SeaWorld and Circus World. Among the offerings by Disney during this time were the Pirates of the Caribbean, Big Thunder Railway, Western Town, Lake Wilderness, an old-style swimming hole, and finally Treasure Island. Parts of this announcement was never built at all, or evolved into something else completely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the children of all ages, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus is proud to present our honorary ringmaster, the one and only Mickey Mouse.
Hiya, folks!
Later on, Disney would work with Fowd Entertainment in 1994 on its Mickey Fun songs. Let's go to the circus.
Climb the rope, hear the scene, Calliope. Find me a lemonade. Look at here, look at there, throw your hats in the air.
And 2 years later, Fowd Entertainment hosted a show called Disney on Ice. Disney need not worry though, as Mattell began having some very serious financial issues the following year. Before the park even finished construction of the Showcase Pavilion, Mattell was looking for a way out and a buyer for the park. Rumours did exist that people were interested, including Gulf Oil, which pushed back the opening of the park, but the deal fell through. Mattell were forced to go forward with the construction of the park themselves, and they would try and make it more valuable. Unfortunately, due to this, most of the planned expensive selling points for the park were dropped. The main one being a 19-story 2-story tall hotel in the shape of an elephant. The original planned building was featured on the logo for the park and would have housed high-speed elevators inside the legs of the elephant and an observation deck on top. At night, it was planned to glow with different coloured jewels to light up the park below with a mixture of different colours. All the time and effort poured into the project by Irvin was wasted, and the park never became anything close to how it was planned to be. The Circus World Showcase opened in 1974, though eventually the showcase was dropped by the name, and this will be the park that will become known as Circus World. The preview centre itself began to transform over the next 2 years into somewhat of a theme park. The building itself became the location of the circus arena with live animal acts, clowns, and acrobatics. A large part of the park featured the chance for the audience to become a part of the circus by walking on the tightrope and flying a trapeze with safety equipment, of course. Attractions continued to be built around the building, including the carousel and a Ferris wheel. 1977 saw the addition of Zoomerang, or Flying Daredevil, a shuttle loop and prototype model designed by Aerodynamic, which took guests to the loading station via an elevator. After the park's closure, it was moved to Fun Spot in Indiana, where the elevator section was no longer used. The ride operated until 2008 at its new home and stood standing but not operating until it was dismantled in 2017, and parts of it were used at Frontier City in Oklahoma. 1978 saw the addition of Roaring Tiger, or the Florida Hurricane, a wooden classic out and back that was also operated until the park's closure. This 95-foot-high roller coaster became a favourite of Michael Jackson, who would visit the park to ride it every single time he went to Florida. After the park's closure, it was rumoured he would be buying the ride and moving it to his own theme park, but instead it moved to Magic Springs and Crystal Falls as the Arkansas Twister after being purchased for $10,000. Relocation of the ride and reconstruction, though, took the cost to $900,000. The park also featured a diving show, a Wild West show, animal displays including the world's largest elephant barn, and a children's play area. Attendance would reach its all-time high in 1976, with 1.3 million guests visiting the park that season, and finally began to make a profit. The attendance, though, was a mere half of the nearby SeaWorld. Attendance declined year by year for the next 5. Mattell would sell the circus back to its original owner, Irvin Feld, in 1982 for a loss, but kept the park. The park's attendance continued to drop with the opening of Epcot Center at Walt Disney World, making guests who visited the area spend more time at Walt Disney World itself rather than heading outside to other attractions. 2 years later, Mattell decided they had had enough and sold the park to Jim Monahan, an Arizona businessman, for $10 million. He continued to tidy the place up and add more rides. He nicknamed the park Thrill City USA, and he aimed to turn the park into a world-class theme park. He auctioned off the 1921 carousel and other attractions he considered that didn't draw attendance. He added a second shuttle loop coaster created by Schwarzkopf called the Wiener Loopin, which was relocated from a park in Austria. Again, the ride is still operating today as Bullet in Mexico after a few years at Flamingo Land in the UK.
Well, the circus has come to town and has left. One of Orlando's attractions is closing down after being a landmark for more than 10 years.
1986, park employees arrived at work to find out the park would be closing abruptly. The park had been operating for 15 years and again was sold at this time to HBJ for $18 million. HBJ had been on a Florida theme park buying spree, and you may remember them from our video on the history of Cypress Gardens, as they purchased that along with SeaWorld.
We're going to create a completely new name and new thrust to this attraction, and one of the things we felt was appropriate would be to close it, take the time to do it right, and in effect let Circus World properly go away, and so that we can come back with something new and exciting.
Employees were encouraged to apply for jobs at SeaWorld or Cypress Gardens, and all of the circus performers were now without a job. Circus World was no more. As I said though, this is a story of 2 opening and closings.
Baseball, you won't find video games or laser shows or anything high-tech. What you will find are traditional classic attractions, a wooden roller coaster, a log flume, baseball, and Wild West shows, family attractions that are as fun today as way back when. And that's what makes Boardwalk and Baseball unlike anywhere else. Instead of creating another amusement park, we've created another period in time. Boardwalk and Baseball, an American classic.
HBJ had big plans for the park, which would have a whole new image and name, Boardwalk and Baseball. They would spend up to $50 million on the retheme, as the company was stated as saying they were not a fan of the fantasy circus theme. The new park would retain many of the existing attractions but completely remove the circus aspects. The new theme was a turn-of-the-century seaside boardwalk, and they covered most of the concrete pathways inside the park with wood. A horse show was one of the replacements for the existing circus shows. The circus displays were replaced with borrowed baseball exhibits from Cooperstown, New York's Baseball Hall of Fame. The rethemed park was opened in April 1987 and was seen to have a superior theme to the one it replaced, but its relatively standard attractions were still no match for local competitors. Within 18 months, the new park was in financial ruin. The park took all measures it could to cut costs by laying off staff and reducing opening hours. They had spent $1 million to install antique-style gas lighting throughout the park, but the park closed so early in the day it was rarely ever used or seen. The IMAX theater located in the old Showcase building would show for some reason Grand Canyon: The Hidden Secrets. HBJ also opened a huge baseball stadium north of the park, Baseball City Stadium. The park was the home of the Kansas City Royals spring training, who signed on for a 15-year contract and had a capacity of 8,000. It opened 1 year after the new rethemed park in February 1988.
Come to life beneath the bright Florida sun. Just what does a typical workday consist of for the Royals in their new springtime home?
The reopened park, while offering a new theme, did not offer any new attractions other than the baseball stadium. After the continued financial struggle of the park, whose attendance declined sharply through the years, HBJ sold it along with SeaWorld and Cypress Gardens to Busch Entertainment. This second version of the park lasted less than 3 years. On the afternoon of January 17th, with no warning, the park closed. This time there was no coming back for the park. Rumours did circulate that Six Flags were going to buy it, but that didn't happen. The baseball stadium remained until 2002 due to the 15-year contract before it was vacated and demolished in 2005. The rest of the rides had already been relocated, and the only other remaining structure was the first one to be built for Circus World. The IMAX tent building sat abandoned as a grey, ugly reminder of what could have been sitting behind it, a fully fledged, immersive theme park, which was now just an empty field. It was also finally demolished along with the stadium 15 years after the park had closed. After the park's closure, the area was sold to developer Victor Posner in 2001. Posner Park was built in the area, which featured a large retail complex and big stores opened in 2008. Walking around the area now, you would have no idea you were stood on the land of these ill-fated parks. The land had been the grand idea of an immersive circus theme park that never came to be. Would this story have been different if Mattell had built the full concept as planned and did not run into financial issues? Who really knows? Central Florida's theme parks may have looked very different than they do today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct. Did you visit Circus World or Boardwalk and Baseball, or did you have no idea about this place's existence just down the road from Disney? Let us know in the comments below. A special thank you to our Patreons for supporting the channel. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates on upcoming episodes, and we will see you next time.